I had written on one of my posts that because of the fall of man, life has become a battlefield, a war zone. But we get to win if we fight right, if we fight the good fight of faith. So think about this for a minute. I wrote here because of the fall of man. Well, did you know that war broke out in heaven when Lucifer decided to, he got all proudful, got full of pride, and we know the word says that a fall goes before pride, or pride goes before a fall. Excuse me. So, warfare actually started in heaven. Think about that. Wow. Then we have back in the garden. Back in Genesis. This is after the war broke out in heaven. We have God telling Adam, the first man, to guard, to protect, to keep the garden before the fall. All right? You know where I'm going with this. You know, the Old Testament is full of military imageries. There's battles. You want to read about battles, read the Old Testament. There is none, the kinds of battles we find in the Old Testament, there's none in the New Testament because of the cross. But what took place in the Old Testament regarding spiritual warfare, there was spiritual warfare, guaranteed. We see that more predominant in the New Testament. And that's very interesting. But the spiritual warfare was taking place in the Old Testament after the fall. Absolutely. Right up to even the birth of Jesus. Warfare against Jesus, the baby Jesus. Herod, all the firstborn, he's got to kill them all. Yeah, because he had heard about the coming Messiah. Right? They heard about this King of the Jews. Right? Got to get him. Got to get him. New Testament, full of warfare imageries. It's everywhere. And today, even throughout history, we've got wars, all kinds of wars. There are wars that are warranted. They're justified. Absolutely. They're called holy wars. I'm not talking about, I don't want to get into that. I'm not talking about crusades and stuff like that. No, I'm talking about wars where you need to protect your nation. All right? From the enemy. That's a type of war. That's a defensive war. But many times you have to go on the offensive. I'm not an expert on war, the history of wars, but it's fascinating. But at the same time, I don't like wars because wars send people to hell. The Lord had told Dave Roberson that Mormonism, what's that got to do with wars? Well, it does and it doesn't. Well, it does, but Mormonism had sent more people to hell than the two world wars put together. Wow. Okay, so imagine all the people killed and murdered during the two world wars that were not born again. That's what I don't like about wars. That's what I don't like about people dying. We have wars. We got drug wars. We got wars on the drug cartels. We got wars against pornography. There's all kinds. The word war is everywhere, even in today's language, vernacular. It's everywhere. And you're going to have wars until it's over with. What does the word say about wars, rumors of wars, nations raising up against nations, kingdoms against kingdoms? Armageddon. That's going to be the war of all wars. Millions fighting against each other. Two major armies in the last of the last days. This is serious stuff. And I will say this. Most true Christians, they have no idea that they're in a war. They have no idea. I mean, even putting on the armor of God, the full armor of God. But even besides that, if you read through from Genesis to the last book of the Old Testament, which is actually Second Chronicles, it's not Malachi, according to the Hebrew text, but even from Matthew to Revelation, war, battles. I mean, even within the church, there are types of wars. Wars regarding doctrines. Preachers being combative. And I've got that working in me a little bit. You've got the term apologetics, but then you've got polemics. This is right through the Bible. It's everywhere. Shalom and amen.